Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
We are now moving on to the last part of this presentation. Here we will be looking at Halliday's functions of language. Halliday has done a very significant contribution in the field of analysis and identification of functions of language. We have learned so far that animal and human communication are purposeful activity, and we looked at form, meaning and function and their interrelationship. In the previous session, we looked at Jakobson's 6 functions of language, and further we would be looking at Halliday's 7 functions of language. Halliday identifies 7 functions which are then further segregated into 3 micro-functions of language. His book, An Introduction to Functional Grammar, is a seminal work in this aspect. Let us first have a look at Halliday's model. He looks at language as a semiotic system. He tries to analyze how meanings are coded into words. To do this, he studied the language that children use and how the learning process helps them in assimilating language. His analysis revealed that children get motivated to learn a language as it serves specific functions for them, and they use the language to serve their requirements. Analyzing the language that children learn, he identified 7 basic functions that children use the language for: instrumental, interactional, regulatory, personal, heuristic, imaginative, and representational. We will look at each function that language serves independently. The first one that we will take up is instrumental function of language. Children use this function of language to express their needs, their desires, and their wants. They often wish to communicate their preferences, their choices, and what are the things that they require at a particular point of time. For example, I want banana. I want that ball. So they are expressing their requirements through using language. The second purpose that they wish language to serve for them is interactional purpose. They use language to maintain contact with others and form relationships, to make friends, to interact, plan, develop, or maintain a play or group activity or a social relationship. For example, this is my mummy. I will be the mom. Let's play. So they are using language to perform, forming bonds with their peers and with others. The third function that they use language is regulatory. They tell others what is required to be done. They attempt to pass instructions and make demands. And often they use language to control others. For example, go away, give me this, listen. The fourth function that they use language to serve is personal. When they want to convey their feelings, they want to convey their opinions, or they wish to express their individual identity. For example, I am a good girl. I love ice cream. Here I come. This is also referred to as the here I am function. The fifth function that children use language for is called heuristic. A child uses language to learn. This may be in the form of questions and answers, or the kind of running commentary that children frequently use while playing games. They often use language to gain knowledge about the environment and find things out, to wonder or hypothesize. As we know, children are very curious to find answers to several things that they don't understand. For example, why is the sun hot? Why doesn't moon come out in the day? Imaginative function. When children narrate incidents or anecdotes about their lives, they tell stories, they tell jokes, they create an imaginary environment, often in play. They create, explore, and entertain and pretend as if in child's play. For example, we would have often seen children playing with dolls, and they would be creating an event like marriage of their dolls. Sometimes they play school and role play of teacher and student is performed. At times they play home and they play mom, dad, and children. In such instances, they use the language for imaginative purposes. The last and the final function is representational. When children wish to communicate information, when they wish to talk about certain things in their context, then they make use of representational function of the language. For example, this is my home. I will tell you something. I know. So, according to Halliday's analysis of children's language, 7 functions are used by children. The first 4 of these functions help the child to satisfy their physical, emotional, and social needs. The last 3 functions, heuristic, imaginative, and representational, help the child to come to terms with his or her environment. On the analysis of these language functions, Halliday went on to make an analysis of adult language, and he combined adult language into 3 micro functions which are more abstract in nature. The language that the grown ups use are more abstract than concrete, and they can be clubbed into 3 micro categories: ideational, interpersonal, and textual. The ideational function is used to express content, to give structure to experience, and to determine the speaker's way of looking at things. It is about our own consciousness and the conceptualizing process involved in our mental activities. This is also known as the experiential function, which deals with words and their relationship to the world. The second function that adults use language for is called the interpersonal function, which serves to establish and maintain social relationships, to delimit social groups, to identify and reinforce the individual. It is about the social world especially the relationship between speaker and hearer. It enables to project the speaker in the desired way and to represent the speaker. And the third and the final function that adults use language for is the textual function. This is to provide for making links with itself and the features of the situation in which language is used. It allows the speaker to construct passages of discourse that are situationally relevant. When we use language for text, it is about the verbal world, especially the flow of information in a text. It refers to the use of language to construct sentences, integrate them into discourse through cohesive and coherence lending devices to making sentences. Thus, if we summarize what Halliday has researched, he first studied the children's language and identified 7 functions that children use language for. He further classified these functions into 3 micro-functions in the adult language. So to conclude, we had a look at communication and its uses in animal and human communication. We looked at the relationship between form, meaning and function. We started off with a detailed look at Jacobson's 6 functions of language, which are related to 6 factors of communication. And then we went on to look at Halliday's 7 functions of children's language and 3 micro-functions of the adult language. I would recommend you to analyze and compare the model of Jacobson's with that of Halliday. You can identify similarities and differences between the 2 models, notice the terms that they use, and understand their significance. You can also study other researchers in the field mentioned earlier in the module and understand how they are related to reading, referencing, and identification.
Friends, I'm very happy that you have discussed various language functions here. And I'm sure that the session would have been very interesting. Dr. Jain has talked about various functions of the languages, how the same words, how the same sentences can be used for different meanings, for communicating different ideas. So that is very interesting. And she has given very interesting examples. She has given different situations where we can use them, or she has talked about different situations with lot of day-to-day examples. That is very interesting. Ma'am, I would like to change my role a little bit here. I would like to be a part of participants, and I would like to come out with few questions on behalf of participants.
That will be very helpful, sir.
Yes, ma'am, because I think that will be very helpful to our friends also. Ma'am, the first thing which comes to my mind is traditionally grammar used to be given a lot of importance, as we all know, and it was a key to learning a language. That is what was discussed. Structures and many things were taught. But you have not mentioned anything related to grammar when you are talking about the functions.
Exactly.
Why it is so?
Sir, a lot of importance is given to grammar primarily at the primary and tertiary levels.
Okay.
And a lot of students learn grammar at that level. But then learning grammar has its own significance, but how to use that, how to implement that, and how to communicate effectively. So one learns, let us say, the interrogative form.
Okay.
So one learns the grammar that is involved in constructing an interrogative form. But then at a higher level, we need to move a little bit forward, and we need to learn how interrogatives can be employed in addressing different functions of language. And therefore, I understand that when I am conducting this session, grammar is already there with the learners to a
Very
certain
true,
extent.
very true.
And then I would like to build up further, because language functions does of course presume knowledge of grammar, which is the base
Very
of any
true.
language.
Very true.
So it builds a step further than
Very
grammar.
true, very true. And at the same time, even if you look at from a different angle, like when you really use language, if it is a language which I've learnt through environment or not through books and
Books,
that, it is not necessary that I have learnt a grammar of
Grammar of
language.
a language,
So I know
exactly.
functions of language.
Language,
I
yes.
use language, but I don't use it like grammarian should use.
Should use,
or I don't learn
absolutely.
the grammars.
Grammar,
I
exactly.
know the language. So that
Yes.
is also
So
true.
when the first native speakers of any language use, they do not they have not taught or have been learning language
true.
grammar,
Very true.
but they know the functions of the
Very
language.
true. So, say for example, as you aptly said, if I talk about Gujarati, I know Gujarati very well. I know the functions of Gujarati language.
Very true.
I can talk to anybody in a fluent way, and I can use many of the functions of Gujarati language. But maybe I am not good in Gujarati grammar.
Quite possible. Quite
Very
possible.
true, ma'am.
That is a theoretical base. Grammar provides you a theoretical
Very
base.
true.
But then, if we understand in our common everyday situations, we employ language to serve a certain function.
Very true. And that's why communicative language is there.
That becomes significant when we have to communicate.
So, ma'am, another thing which comes to my mind is how are language functions important in learning or teaching a language? How are they important?
Exactly. That is a very important question, and I'm sure the participants of this program would be interested in
Yes,
knowing.
ma'am.
So thanks for asking me that. Sir, we were just discussing right now, when we learn a language as our first language, we do not begin by learning its grammar, but
Very
we
true.
understand how and what kind of structures we have to use in several situations.
Very true.
And we also learn, without being taught the grammar, what is important, what is to be said in which manner. Language functions actually addresses that. So suppose I have to be a little polite, and I also want somebody to do something. There are two ways that I can say. One, I can say, for example, if I want somebody to close the window, I can say, close the window, which is a kind of an order.
Yes.
I can be a little polite and say, can you close the window? The minute I am asking an interrogative, I am not asking the person to tell me whether the person can close the window or not, but I expect the person to close the window.
Very true.
So, when we bring in certain politeness kind of principles, then language functions become very important.
Very true.
And teaching that helps the students to become more effective speakers, more effective
true.
users of
Very
a
true,
language.
ma'am.
And
Another- yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yeah, carry on.
I was saying that is why I was very happy when I saw in your list of topics that you have included language functions, and I thought this would really be addressing the needs of the English teachers
Very
and
true.
would help them in the classrooms.
Yes, you rightly said that. Now, let me become a little bit technical here. When I was listening to your video and watching it, I was watching and finding that you are referring to two persons, and that is Halliday and Jacobson. I would like to ask you that how are the theories of Halliday and Jacobson relevant? And are they also interrelated? Will you please help us?
Yes, sir. Sir, Jacobson was an American and Halliday was an Englishman. A space apart, a decade apart, both of them researched into language functions. And both of them have come up with different sets of functions of language. But if
Okay.
we analyze them carefully, we find that there is a lot of overlap between what Jacobson says and between what Halliday says.
Very true.
So Jacobson gives 6 functions and Halliday gives 7. But then there is a lot of similarities. They use different terms, but the ideas, the meanings are similar in both of them. In fact, I have put for students a recommended activity towards the end of the session that I would like them to delve deeper into the theories of Halliday and Jacobson and try to identify the similarities and differences, which will help them understand them better. As to your previous question, whether they are relevant, yes, sir, they are very relevant today. In 1970s, one whole approach and method of learning language developed called notional functional approach to language teaching, and which was the foundation for communicative language teaching,
Yes.
which holds true even today. And this entire notional functional approach takes on from the theories of Halliday, which is the functional use of language. And this is very relevant today. Actually, we often see spoken English courses mushrooming
Very
all
true,
across
very
the
true.
city. And many of them focus on the functions of language.
Yes, very
So
true.
suppose we have to ask somebody, suppose we have to greet somebody. So what are the various forms we can use for
Yes,
greeting?
to greet.
So we can teach them such kind of modules, and the functions that have to be served, we can teach language related to that. So I think this is very relevant even today, and
Very
that
true.
can help teachers of English in a great way in helping them,
Yes.
their students learning English for communicative purposes.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for making the function of this course very functional. I thought that let me use the word function.
Yes,
And really, she very interestingly talked about various functions of language. We all are almost aware of the functions, but we got theoretical touch to these functions. And we got varieties how you can use it in the class.
Classroom.
So this will make our classroom very interactive, I guess,
Interesting,
and that will
yes.
help many of our teachers and learners. When it helps our teachers and learners here, that will eventually help the classes and the
exactly.
students who are there in the class.
Absolutely,
So eventually it will reach to the students, and I think their learning will be interesting and more effective eventually after using these strategies. So I would like to thank you, ma'am, on behalf of UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University, on behalf of Ministry of Human Resource Development's National Resource Center of Gujarat University, and on behalf of all the participants whom you have discussed just now. Thank you very much, ma'am.
And I would like to thank you for giving me this excellent opportunity of presenting some ideas on language functions, also of reaching out to the teaching fraternity, to my colleagues who are in different parts of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you.